Let's talk about women in the film industry. If you watched the Oscars this year, you may have noticed that with the exception of categories like Best Actress, Costume Design, Makeup, and Production Design, the nominees were overwhelmingly male. In fact, 83% of the Oscar nominees this year were men, while only 17% were women. Also, all the Best Picture nominees were all stories about males. This isn't news by any means, as the film industry has long been a boys' game. But it does beg the question, why the big gap? Is it because 70% of Academy voters are men? Is it because men are better than women at making films? Or is it because there are fewer women in the industry to nominate in the first place? Stephen Follows, a British writer and producer, recently compiled a report on the gender of employees who had worked on 2,000 of the biggest grossing films since 1994. The figures he found were alarming. More than 3/4 of production crews involved in making the biggest grossing films of the last 20 years had been men. Only 22% were women. Only in traditionally female departments, like wardrobe, makeup, and casting, did women make up a majority. Visual effects had only 17.5% of women. Musicals had just 16%. Camera and electricals had only 5%. What I found disheartening were the figures for women in key creative roles, those who had the most influence on the end product and the representation of women on screen. Women accounted for only 14% of the editors, 10% of the writers, 20% of the producers, and only 5% of the directors. And, with the exception of these traditional female jobs, these figures have declined in the last 20 years. For example, the percentage of women in the sound department decreased by 4%, 7% in editing, and a whopping 18% in animation. One could argue that this drop is due to the increased reliance on technology in post-production, which is traditionally male-dominated, but that doesn't really explain the declining numbers. Quick history lesson. Did you know that film editing, the actual cutting and piecing together of film, was first done by women? Admittedly, it was because women had the dainty little fingers to handle such intricate tasks like sewing and were thus fit for the job. But in those positions, women were able to establish innovative techniques that shaped how we edit films today. For example, Dee Allen, one of the most stylish and creative editors in the American film industry, pioneered the use of audio overlaps. You know, when you have the audio of one clip continue into the next, or you have the audio of the next clip start at the end of the previous clip. Oh yeah, Dee Allen, who's responsible for cutting such classics as Bonnie and Clyde and The Breakfast Club, is responsible for that. Women are definitely capable of bringing something new to the table of cutting-edge technology. But why, then, are fewer women in these roles? It's not because fewer women are enrolling in film programs at university. Look at the enrollment stats for any university, and you'll find that the ratio is closer to, and even at, 50-50 for women and men. The problem, according to several women in the biz, lies in the freelance nature of the industry. In particular, the discriminatory hiring practices and the sexual harassment that goes unchecked. Director Beryl Richards states that there is no one monitoring and no one challenging the pattern that is replicating itself, and that is why nothing is changing. On so many sets, women are seen as lesser beings in terms of status, and many women still find it hard to be taken seriously. Writer Zoe Margulies, who spent 10 years working in the UK film industry, says that the daily taunts about her body and the constant innuendo were undermining and made me consider more than once about quitting my job. To quote this IndieWire piece on director Kimberly Pierce, "The heartbreaking thing is that even when you're trying to fight the sexism because it is so pervasive, you also buy into it. You buy into it because it is institutionalized. It is institutionalized because they have gotten away with it for so long that people don't notice how easy it is to fall into sexist patterns. In my short time as a film student, I have already experienced this firsthand. A couple months ago for Film Club, the director asked all available crew to come to set and build some light bounces. When I arrived on set, one of the first things a crew member said to me was, "Oh, I'm surprised you're here." I asked him why, and he said something along the lines of, "Well, we're doing manly things today." Shortly after that, a joke was made about the kind of work we were doing and the ratio of men to women on set. To be clear, I was the only woman on set. I laughed it off with the rest of the guys because at that point, what do? Do I miss out on future opportunities to work with the film club because I had to be the one to point out how problematic this dude's joke was? It's no wonder that there's a gender gap in the film industry, and it continues to widen. But Why should we care? Women make up 50% of the population, and yet only 30% of speaking characters in the top 100 grossing films. Women have stories to tell. How can mainstream audiences hear those stories when women find it increasingly harder to break into the industry, stay in the industry, and be taken seriously in those key creative roles as director, writer, and producer? Film, and art in general, is a reflection of ourselves, and yet the underrepresentation of women in film, both on and off screen, suggests that we don't value their input, their innovations, their stories. So what can we do? Well, as consumers, we can talk with our money. We can support women filmmakers by going to see their work in the cinema or buying their films. Continue to talk about women filmmakers in a public platform. Share their work with friends. And if you're a young woman considering a job in the film industry, make lots of stuff and share your awesome work. And don't be hindered by these disappointing statistics. I'm reminded of this recent Twitter exchange between a young woman and Emma Watson, actually. The young woman asks Emma, "My dad says that I can't be an engineer because it's a men's profession. What do I do to change that?" Emma's response? Become an engineer. If you want to make films, become a filmmaker. You have the potential. Anyway, that's my spiel on women in the film industry. But I'd love to know, why do you think the gender gap in the film industry is widening? Why is the number of women in traditionally female departments, like wardrobe and makeup, increasing, but decreasing in traditionally male departments like sound and animation? On a side note, I recently produced some videos for my camera techniques class, including one that features our very own Chris. If you'd like to check them out, I will be posting them on my personal channel, which I will link below. I also recently signed up for Vimeo, which is apparently important if you're trying to break into the film industry. I haven't posted any stuff there yet, but I am looking for good creators to follow. So if you're on Vimeo and you know of good creators, even yourself, please tell me their names down below so I can check them out. As always, thank you for watching. Chris, I'll see you on Wednesday. Whew, it's a ranty one today. Sorry if you don't like rants about gender inequality.